We live in a world that's constantly speaking, often too loudly. Everyone seems to have an opinion about your journey, your pace, your potential, and the temptation is always there to defend yourself, to argue back, to prove them wrong in words. But that's not where real power lies. See, the truly dangerous individual is not the one who shouts their ambition, but the one who works in silence, because silence doesn't mean surrender. Silence means strategy. When you're focused on the noise, you lose sight of the work. And work, quiet, consistent, often unseen work, is where transformation happens. While others waste their breath trying to control perception, you have the opportunity to quietly build something undeniable. The world may overlook your beginning, but it cannot ignore your results. That's the paradox of silence. It looks weak on the surface, but underneath, it's where strength is forged. Psychologically, this is where discipline wins over ego. The ego wants applause. The ego wants others to know you're trying. But discipline doesn't care about being seen. It only cares about the result. The more you learn to detach from needing validation and instead embrace solitude and focus, the more unstoppable you become. There's no pressure to perform for an audience. You simply refine in private, preparing for the moment your success speaks for you. Now let's be clear, this isn't about hiding, this isn't about shrinking back. It's about intentional silence. It's about choosing to let your energy go inward toward mastering your craft, your character, and your consistency. The most effective revenge is not loud, it's thorough, and when it's thorough, it becomes undeniable. Philosophers have long taught that stillness isn't absence, it's presence. It's being anchored so deeply that you don't need to flinch at criticism or chase applause. You're just doing the work. And eventually, the same voices that once tried to define your worth will fall silent, because success makes more noise than any argument ever could. You don't need to explain what you're doing, you just need to do it. Focus on the work, let the noise fade. And remember, the loudest revenge doesn't speak, it shines. It doesn't argue, it ascends. When your effort is relentless and your attention stays inward, the world eventually hears the only thing worth hearing, your undeniable success. It's a hard truth, but one we must face with courage. Some people only support you when you're beneath them. The moment you begin to rise, to grow, to stretch beyond what they've always known you to be, something shifts. The smiles fade, the compliments slow. Suddenly, your success becomes uncomfortable. Not because you've changed for the worse, but because your growth reminds them of their own stagnation. This is one of life's most sobering realities. Not everyone clapping for you wants to see you win. And when your potential begins to emerge, it has a strange way of revealing the true hearts of those around you. But here's the beauty in that. Growth isn't just a personal transformation. It's a filter. It separates the ones who were with you for who you were from the ones who can embrace who you're becoming. When you commit to becoming more disciplined, more focused, more faithful to your calling, you will inevitably lose people. But that's not a setback. That's a sign you're moving forward. And in those moments when it feels like the room around you is growing quieter, don't be discouraged. You're not losing the wrong people. You're gaining space for the right ones. From a psychological perspective, we often underestimate how threatening change can feel to others, especially those whose sense of identity is wrapped around the idea of who we used to be. And if they haven't chosen growth for themselves, your growth becomes a mirror they'd rather not look into. So they push back, they pull away, or worse, they try to pull you down. But don't let that noise distract you. Let it confirm that you're on the right track. Philosophically, this is about understanding the solitude that often accompanies significance. The higher you go, the fewer people can go with you. It's not elitism, it's elevation. And elevation requires separation. It requires discernment, because though a path to becoming who you're meant to be often demands walking away from who you've always been, and sometimes from those who can't accept the difference. So if you've felt the sting of silence from people who once cheered you on, don't lower yourself just to be welcomed again. Keep rising, keep building. Let your progress do the talking. In time, the ones who truly matter won't just tolerate your elevation. They'll rise with you. You don't need everyone's approval to walk in your purpose, just the courage to keep going when their applause stops. There's a dangerous temptation many of us fall into when we're hurt, especially when we're betrayed, underestimated, or belittled. We want to talk, we want to expose, we want to tell the world how unfairly we've been treated. It's a very human response. But here's the truth that takes wisdom and strength to live by. Restraint is often more powerful than retaliation. Silence chosen deliberately is not weakness, it's mastery. You see, when someone speaks against you, whether through gossip, criticism, or outright betrayal, it's natural to want to fight back, to clarify, to defend your name. But often, when you engage in petty wars, you step down from the higher ground you were already standing on. You begin playing on their level, and when you do that, you lose the clarity and the dignity that set you apart in the first place. Restraint is a discipline of the mature. It is rooted in the belief that truth has its own timing and that reality has a way of surfacing without needing your constant intervention. In fact, silence in the face of provocation is not about ignoring wrongdoing. It's about choosing a different kind of justice. It's about letting your work, your endurance, and your character do the talking. Philosophically, we might say that silence in this context becomes a form of moral protest. It's not passivity, it's principle. It says, I will not be reduced by your chaos. I will not let your noise shape my identity. And psychologically, it gives us the space to focus inward rather than spiraling outward. Instead of investing emotional energy into rebuttals, we reinvest that energy into growth, progress, and purpose. Some of the most powerful people in history were quiet in the face of slander, not because they lacked a defense, but because they knew time would reveal what words never could. Their restraint didn't make them passive, it made them unstoppable. Hey, understood that when your success begins to speak, the very voices that once discredited you grow silent. Not because you silenced them, but because you outgrew them. So the next time you're tempted to retaliate, ask yourself, am I responding to preserve my ego, or am I resisting to protect my destiny? Because there's a difference, and one leads you forward, the other keeps you stuck. Let the noise around you echo into silence, not by shouting back, but by rising so high that they have no choice but to stop and watch. There's something quietly powerful about consistency. In a world that celebrates instant results and overnight fame, those who show up day after day, regardless of who's watching, become a rare breed. While others are distracted by applause, recognition, or external validation, the consistent ones are busy building. They are driven by something deeper, vision. When you commit to your craft, your purpose, your calling, you begin laying down bricks of excellence that don't always attract immediate attention. But that's not the point. You aren't working to be seen. You're working because the mission itself matters. The seed you plant today in silence becomes the fruit that speaks volumes tomorrow. There is a kind of spiritual discipline in showing up when no one notices. It tests your motives. It refines your character. It shapes a resilience that's not swayed by praise or discouraged by silence. And in that hidden work, in that quiet labor, greatness is formed. You become rooted, unshakable, because your confidence doesn't come from external validation. It comes from the deep knowing that you are walking in alignment with your assignment. Psychologically, this is where growth compounds. Neuroscience tells us that repeated effort wires the brain for mastery. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you build neural pathways that reinforce excellence. Consistency, then, isn't just a virtue, it's a strategy. It's how habits are transformed into legacies. And philosophically, this kind of commitment speaks to the nature of purpose itself. Meaning is rarely loud, it doesn't clamor for attention. It invites you into a deeper rhythm, one that requires patience, humility, and faith. Faith that your effort is not in vain. Faith that the work will one day reveal its reward. Those who succeed loudly are often those who have toiled quietly. And when the moment comes, the breeze act through, the recognition, the undeniable impact, it doesn't arrive as a surprise. It arrives as confirmation. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove anything. Your work proves it for you. So, if you find yourself in a season of silence where no one sees the hours, the effort, or the pain, keep going. That is the proving ground of destiny. And when your success arrives, it will speak louder than any explanation ever could. Let your consistency echo louder than your critics. Keep building in silence, because when the time is right, the world will hear the sound of what you've become. There's a quiet strength in letting your results speak instead of your voice. In a world obsessed with self-promotion, many feel pressured to constantly announce their progress, defend their choices, or prove their worth. But real power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't rush to explain or argue. It waits, it works, and then it lets the results do the talking. One of the most profound marks of maturity is the ability to remain silent in the face of doubt, criticism, or even praise, and continue forward unshaken. Why? Because you understand that explanation is not transformation. Arguments don't build legacies, actions do. Words may offer intention, but results deliver truth. When you choose silence over defense, you're not surrendering, you're trusting, you're placing your confidence in what will be revealed in time. And that trust requires discipline. It requires a deep awareness of who you are and what you're called to do. You're not in a race to be understood by the world. You're on a mission to become undeniable through your impact. This mindset echoes throughout history. The greatest inventors, leaders, and visionaries rarely wasted time explaining every step of their journey. They stayed focused. They let their lives become the evidence of their beliefs, because ultimately silence guarded their energy, and their energy was poured into excellence. Philosophically, this way of living draws from a deeper well. It's rooted in humility, not insecurity. It flows from the realization that your identity is not tied to the noise you make, but to the fruit you bear. Psychologically, it's freeing. When you stop needing to justify your path to others, you reclaim your peace. Your mental space becomes a place of creativity, clarity, and direction. That's when the real shift happens, when you're no longer reacting to the outside world, but creating from within. Your silence. It becomes sacred ground where your future is built. And when that future becomes visible, when the results finally surface, there will be no need for explanation. People will see, they will understand. And even if they don't, it won't matter. Because you didn't live for their approval, you lived for your purpose. So don't be afraid to be quiet in the process. Let your work be the conversation. Let your consistency be the sermon. Let your results be the roar. The loudest message you'll ever speak is the life you build in silence. There's something remarkably dignified about achieving success without needing applause. When your wins are earned in silence and carried with grace, they carry a weight that manufactured recognition simply cannot match. Too often people confuse validation with value. They believe that being seen is equal to being significant. But true significance, the kind that outlives moments and reshapes lives, is never loud, it's consistent, it's purposeful, and most of all, it's humble. When you succeed without boasting, you leave a deeper impression. Why? Because you allow your results to create their own echo. You don't chase applause, you draw respect. And respect, unlike attention, cannot be demanded. It must be earned over time through unwavering integrity and discipline. That's the power of quiet achievement. It reveals character. It shows the world you were never working for recognition, but for something much greater, meaning. This is a mindset rooted in spiritual maturity. It's not about shrinking back or being invisible. It's about refusing to let ego direct your journey. When Jesus spoke about humility, he wasn't calling us to weakness. He was inviting us to strength that didn't need to prove itself. In the same way, when you succeed quietly, you align yourself with a higher perspective. You understand that the deepest victories don't always make the loudest noise, but they do make the longest impact. From a psychological standpoint, silent success is a reflection of internal security. People who are deeply rooted don't need external noise to feel fulfilled. They're anchored by purpose, not popularity. They're fueled by progress, not praise. And that clarity liberates them to keep building even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. And let's be honest, those watching don't forget. The ones who doubted, dismissed, or underestimated you will remember your rise, not because you shouted it, but because they couldn't deny it. That's the kind of success that lasts. That's the kind of success that inspires. And most importantly, that's the kind of success that transforms. So stay committed. Let your discipline speak louder than your declarations. Let your grace carry more weight than your words. And when success arrives, as it surely will, wear it with humility. Not because you're small, but because you know your strength doesn't need a stage to be real. The most powerful victories are the ones that don't need to be announced. They only need to be lived.